Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Unplugged Woodworking's podcast. So what have I been up to? I actually took a break from making the kitchen breakfast bar thing. That wasn't because I was getting stressed with it or anything. It's solely because this year obviously I plan on doing a lot more videos. I want to kind of pursue the YouTube monetization thing a bit more to try and get a bit more involved in that side of it. So I decided to leave that. I am actually camcording that, videoing it rather, but obviously there's a lot of work involved in that. It's going to take a lot of time, so I've left that alone for the moment, and I decided for a host of reasons to build a Sawhorse workbench. I have kind of thought about this in the past. It's very similar to what a traditional Japanese kind of saw bench would look. Not a saw bench, sorry, a workbench. It's basically, as it sounds, you've got two sawhorses with a board on top. So I kind of I need to manage my time a little bit better, but I've kind of nearly got the two of them done. I do need to add a few more things. Hopefully tomorrow I should kind of have at least one of them done and one of them nearly complete, depending on glue up and stuff. I have actually got to laminate some plywood together. Just the plywood that was available to us at the time was only 1/2 inch, so obviously I'm going to have to laminate some of that. So what impressed me, as I was doing a little bit of research on sawhorses, basically to kind of get me head around a few ideas that I had in my mind. Obviously I've done a bit of research and I come across, I think it's a Japanese craftsperson. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, but I will leave a link in the description, and I'm going to put some photos on the screen. So I actually come across the Sawhorse, and the Sawhorse, it's so cool. It's sliding dovetails on a bevel on a leg. So if you can imagine a Sawhorse leg that's coming down, and at the very top, it's on a there's actual bevel that goes into the main body of the Sawhorse. And those are like stopped sliding dovetails. It's like absolutely awesome. Obviously, if you're watching this, there'll be a picture up on the screen. It's super impressed with that. They look very sturdy. I'm surmising they'll last for a very long time. So something else as well. As I clicked onto the guy's profile, just to have a nosy and to check out, what else he does. Something else, so I don't normally do this, but I'm going to mention something else. The way he fastened, it's I don't know if it's a kind of a tabletop. It's kind of I'll put a picture up on the screen. It's a kind of a little table, but I'm not sure if it might be some sort of workbench. There was a name, I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, what I thought was absolutely awesome was the way that the thing was, the tabletop itself was held in place, and it was held in place with bow ties. So if you can imagine a bow tie that you would use to stop splitting in a slab, well, a shorter version of that, and that's actually fitted to the underside rails of the table frame, and basically you've got like a joint where it's a square for the bow tie to fit in, and then from that square, there's actually like a sliding dovetail cut. So you basically get the thing into place, push it down, and then you would push it one way, either to the left or to the right, and it would lock into position. That's how I had it in my head, but in the actual table itself, I think they might have actually been knocked in when the tabletop was in place. They might have actually been put in and knocked in, maybe. I'm not sure how you put them in, but that's kind of how I had it in my head. But super cool. I've never ever seen a tabletop held down like that before. Typically what I tend to see is screws, basically, and I've used them myself many times, but very cool. It's a lot of work, but very cool. So today I'm going to talk about the Sawhorse workbench I'm currently building. Just going to go over a few things, the design of the horses and stuff, and why I've designed them that way, or kind of thought them that way, because I'm kind of still designing as I build, which I do quite a lot, sometimes to my advantage, sometimes not to my advantage, but touch wood, I haven't had too many mishaps. So as I said, I stopped building the breakfast bench solely so I could like get some videos out, basically, and one of the things that I thought would be good would be to make a tall bench. So obviously I use my Roman workbench loads and loads, and I love my Roman workbench, and I'll always use my Roman workbench. However, because I'm getting old and my back's not playing nicely, I get good days and I get bad days, and my knees are hitty missy. I think I might have like the onset of arthritis in my knees. That's like basically 25 years of scaffolding, basically, with my back and with my knees. Scaffolding is not very kind to your body. Obviously, when I'm spending great amounts of time on my knees and great amounts of time bent over, it's taking its toll on us. So I thought it would be nice to have a tall bench so I can pretty much move in between the two of them, whatever's more comfortable for us. I think with most of the saw and ripping, at least, I think I will be doing that on the Roman workbench. But you know, whenever I can stand up, I think that's going to be beneficial for myself. Obviously, my knees aren't going to be bent, obviously, because I'm not going to be kneeling on them, so that's going to relieve my knees a little bit, I think. I've also had a little bit of problem with my hips, but that's not skeletal. That's more fascia related, and I think it's I think like people that sit a lot at a desk, on, like, you know, they might have a computer job or an IT job, something like that, where they're at a desk. I think people tend to get problems like that because they're sitting all day. But with me, obviously, I'm on my feet all day at work, but when I'm not at work, I'm home and I'm woodworking, so I'm sitting a lot and I'm on my knees a lot. So to try and minimise that, I thought this would be a good idea. And I've had loads and loads of people, you know, ask us, am I going to do a tall bench? So I thought it would be a good idea to do it. I did, as I mentioned, I did kind of think about this a long time ago, but obviously it never materialised. This time it's going to materialise. The reason that I've went for this, and I haven't went for something like a Moravian, if I'm saying that correctly, Moravian workbench, which kind of comes apart quite easily and assembles quite easily. It looks that way anyway. I wanted just something like super simple. I mean, in all fairness, you could actually knock these up in a day, depending on your skill level. You could knock one of these Sawhorses up in a day, providing you had everything ready and you weren't waiting for glue up and like I've had to, and you manage your time a little bit better. Like I don't. So that's what I was looking for, but I also wanted to be able to use the Sawhorses as well. Maybe some I didn't want to bring the whole bench out. Maybe I was using my Roman workbench and I just wanted to bring the Sawhorses out. I didn't want to bring the bench top out. So that was kind of like one of the thinkings of it. So material wise, I've went for 4x2 construction timber. This is quite common throughout the West. I'm not too sure what it's like, further than that. But at least for myself and for a lot of people in America, North America that is, it's quite accessible. And for the top, I've opted to go for plywood. So same again, for the majority of people, again in the UK and in North America, Australia, places like that, it's going to be quite accessible. So for me, I could have just used a slab, and I did think about just using a slab. It probably would have cost us more money, which I wasn't too bothered about. I'm fortunate enough at the moment to be able to afford it, so I wasn't too bothered about that. But I would have had to have travelled for it. Where I'm situated in the UK, I can't just drive 20 minutes or even 30 minutes and get some hardwood. I just can't do that. The best I can do is drive 10 minutes and get construction lumber, which I'm using. Plywood, the best I can get is birch ply, which I've opted for. So other than that, I'm kind of looking at maybe an hour and a half's drive, 2 hours drive to get some hardwood, which I do occasionally. But what I do try to do, obviously because I work away from home a lot, so I've got to travel south of England for work. So on the way home, I'm obviously driving north, and I try to, if I need something, I try to stop off on the way, which is usually every 2 weeks usually. So that's what I try to do. So there might be other people like that. So that was me trail of thinking. And obviously ply, the thing with the ply, what I've opted to do is just to laminate it. Basically the ply, it's going to be cut. There's going to be 4 cuts in the ply, and it's going to be laminated. So my original idea, for the top at least, was to use either 3/4 inch or 1 inch, and basically just laminate the 3 sections, so that the whole thing was going to be completed with 1 sheet of ply, which again I thought was going to be good. And it would have been down to the individual. The individual could have chose to go out and buy something nice good quality ply like birch. If they didn't have the money for that, they could have went out and opted for a softwood or a cheap hardwood ply. Obviously, it just depends on the individual and the money they've got available. And sometimes, if you are lucky, which sometimes I am, not this particular time, but sometimes I get plywood given to us, I get wood given to us. Not so long ago, I actually got some 1 inch ply given to us, and it's actually birch ply, but it's I think it was originally some sort of a table. It's like big round table, I think it was. So it's actually cut into quadrants, It's sitting there. Obviously, I haven't used it for anything, but it was no good. Just to give you an example, but it's no good for the workbench I'm building. So the Sawhorse, the construction I went for, it's not like your typical construction. And if I wasn't going to try to utilise it the way I'm going to utilise it, I would have built the Sawhorse completely different. So the way I've opted to do it, and obviously I'm going to explain the reasons why. I'll put a picture up on the screen as well. If you're watching this, you'll get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. So I've started off with a T-shape. So this is a 4x2. I've basically made a T-shape with a 4x2. I made it 3.5 foot long, and at either end is what I've done is created a tenance or like a half lap, if you will. So on the legs, I've cut the legs at 15 degrees, or if you're looking at vertical, the 90 degrees vertical, that would be 75 degrees. So it's no matter which way you start from a right angle, it's 15 degrees. So that's what I opted for. I know there's some Sawhorses that are like 18 degrees. And I know there's some people that like them at like the full like 20 degrees. So I went with 15 degrees. One of the reasons being I thought it would be enough. It kind of is. Obviously, I haven't been able to have a play around with everything yet, so that's debatable at the moment. One of the other reasons that I went for 15 degrees was because of the footprint. Obviously, I've got to stack these things in my shed, and at the moment, I think there's like, or at least with this bench when I've built it, there's going to be like 7 workbenches. It's a bit excessive, I know. I really need to get rid of some. Or do something with them, give them away to someone or whatever. But obviously, like storage is like at a premium for me, at least. Obviously, I'm not going to be leaving these outside because I live in England, the northeast of England, and it likes to rain a lot. So, you know, the wood would just get damaged. Obviously, especially the plywood. The plywood would start delaminating itself, you know, because it's not exterior. So I'm surmising, obviously, enough rain would just mess with the glue and it would come apart. So back to the Sawhorse. So as I said, I've cut these at 15 degrees, so the top is cut at 15 degrees, and I've basically went 15 degrees at the face, and these marry against the lap joint, so it is a kind of a modified lap joint, if you will. So I've got the full end grain hitting the underside of the T-piece, and then the long section coming along, or the vertical piece of the T-piece, I've got that end grain is hitting against the side of the leg. So that's like the two sections of end grain, which is obviously going to stop the legs from twisting. So these are going to be strengthened with some ply. So the ply, the way I've had it in my head, and obviously the way I'm going to do it, the ply is going to butt underneath the top of the T section. So I'm going to have, in essence, another end grain hitting the underside. So I'm going to have the end grain going like on the T section, on the vertical portions of the T section, and then I'm going to have the end grain of the legs themselves hitting on the underside of the T section, and then the plywood is going to be glued and screwed to the legs to stop them from spreading. But then I've also got that hitting underside the horizontal piece of the T-piece. So the reason I've done it this way is because I want to utilise the front of the Sawhorse. Like typically when you see any Sawhorses, you tend to see the legs, and you'll see the main body is actually past the legs by however much. You know, different Sawhorses have different amounts, but typically you do see you know, the main body is past the legs. In a really good design, which I would probably have done. You know, it's tried and tested, and it's true. Is basically you would have your square piece, and you would cut two notches into it, basically. You know, like a bit of a bridle joint kind of, and on the legs you would cut a half joint, a half lap kind of, with like a bird's mouth kind of joint at the bottom, and that would sit underneath. So that way you've got 3 sections of end grain. So you've got the 2 end grain of the main body of the joint making contact, and then you've got the underside where the bird's mouth is. You've got the end grain there that's making contact as well, obviously glued and screwed in position. This makes for a really like strong Sawhorse, you know, and that's probably something I would have went for. But obviously I want to utilize the ply at the front. So basically on one end of the Sawhorse, the ply is going to come down. It's going to come down like 2 foot, and with that 2 foot, there's going to be dog holes in it, and this is just going to be obviously to put dogs in, to put pegs in. Obviously, because everyone that follows us knows that I work like primarily with pegs and wedges. Like pretty much a lot of the time. Obviously, I do use holdfasts and clamps occasionally, but I mean the majority of my holding does come from pegs and wedges. So obviously, I do want to implement the pegs in. I just think they're so handy. So that's like what that's the reason I've built it as is. So when the bench top is actually sitting on, the bench top is going to be flush with the front of the Sawhorse. So you've got all of the front of the Sawhorse is like clamping area. So, you know, I'm going to be using it's actually 2 pieces of 1/2-inch ply laminated. I don't know what that's going to be like using a holdfast. I don't know if there's going to be enough meat to actually grab the material. However, there's plenty of clamping area, which is another thing I like. So one of the things I had in mind when I was like building the Sawhorse or building this, like started to build this workbench, was that anyone could get like 2 or 4 clamps and they would be good to go, and they would be able to like kind of handle most things between the clamps and a couple of pegs and maybe some wedges. That was kind of me trailer thought. So obviously at the front of the Sawhorse, you know, you've got your A-frame shape. So, you know, a couple of pegs into position and a couple of clamps into position, you could start cutting a tenant in a vertical position. That's kind of the goal that I've went for with it. So that's kind of where it started. And like just yesterday, it started growing arms and legs, which kind of happens when I start thinking about things or looking at things. So I spent a great deal of time after the sun had went down, and I brought the Sawhorse indoors because it's still cold outside, so I brought it indoors just for the glue to set. And I spent a vast amount of time just staring at the Sawhorse, and like a lot of ideas started coming out to us. So the first idea that popped into my head was to be able to use it by itself, just a Sawhorse. Let's just say a bit of the example that I gave before, where I had me Roman workbench out, and for whatever reason I've got one of the Sawhorses out. I don't want to bring the other Sawhorse out and the bench top. So I thought to myself, like, kind of like, what could I do with it? So on the T section, what I thought about doing on one edge was actually like building the ledge, basically. So the thinking behind this was that I could actually set a piece of short material on, obviously no longer than like 3.5 foot ish, clamp it into place, and I would be able to edge plane, and that would just obviously be off one Sawhorse. So I thought that was a pretty cool idea. Obviously I started thinking a little bit more, and I thought to myself, I could actually turn this into a kind of a makeshift moccasin vise as well. So the plan is, obviously this is what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. The plan is, where if I'm looking at the front, of the Sawhorse, I've got the 2 legs at this side and the 2 legs at that side, obviously coming down this way, and what I'm going to try and do, basically, this is how I'm going to do it. This is how I've got it in my head. I'm going to clamp 2 pieces vertically on top of the T-piece, the sides of the top of the T-piece. So these are going to be given as a guide, and what I'm going to do then is actually get a piece on the inside of 2 of the legs and slide it down until they make contact. Once they've made contact, I'm going to screw them into position. Before I do this, I'm actually going to glue on two sections, 2 little sections either end of wood, angled at 15 degrees, and that's what that's going to do. That's going to it's going to make up the difference, because obviously the legs are splayed out at 15 degrees, and this is going to make it perfectly vertical or square at 90 degrees. So once this is in place, what this means is that, let's just say I'm doing some dovetailing. So it basically means I can literally put the piece I'm dovetailing, maybe it's 3 boards, maybe it's like 600 millimeters in total. I can actually put that in, and it's going to have the support piece lower down, so I can clamp it to the top of the T-piece, and then I've obviously got that section underneath that's supporting the back of it, and I can clamp to that as well. So when I'm sawing, it's not just fixed to the top, because if it was just fixed to the top, it would vibrate like crazy and it would move around. But because it's got support and it's clamped like lower down, it's going to have two surfaces to go against, and obviously it's going to be clamped 4 times. So that's kind of what I'm looking to do tomorrow. In my head, it's going to work. I don't see why it shouldn't work. So obviously the good thing about this is it's going to help us out a lot. Obviously, once a Sawhorse is made, it's made. I mean, it's not a great deal of effort for us to do like other things and get things set up, but I just thought it would be nice to have like something like that, because I do quite a lot of dovetails. I mean, sometimes I won't touch them for months and months, and then sometimes I'll have months and months with them. So I thought it would be nice to have something like that. With us making it at 3.5 foot in length, what it means, at least for me, is that even if I've got the two Sawhorses set up and I've got the worktop like in place, I should have enough room to actually be able to utilise that, and for the bench not to be in the way. Just with the sort of like sizes I use, it should be enough. There should be like enough room. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that's kind of something I'm going to do. And obviously, when I've got the two Sawhorses, or indeed the whole thing set up at the front, obviously, when I was talking about I'm going to have the ply shooting down 2 foot, and I'm going to have the dog holes in it. So the thing about having these dog holes is that I can, let's just say the first hole, I can put a peg in the first hole, you know, from the top, peg in the first hole of the other side, clamp that at either side. Now I can basically plane a long piece, like edge plane, a long piece, kind of without a vise. So that's kind of another use. And obviously I'm going to have these spaced out, however much I'm going to have them spaced out. So that means even if I've got, I don't know, let's just say I've got two boards glued together at 400mm or a big board itself, it means I've just got to drop the the pegs down, and obviously it's going to be perfect. Same again, clamp them in place, and I'm going to be able to plane like that. So that was another reason why I've decided on the flush design at the front. I can't see it being too much of a problem being flush. Obviously, as I said before, I would have rather had the sort of bridle joint, the traditional sort of English joiners Sawhorse. I would have preferred something like that, but again, I don't really see kind of too much of an issue. Obviously, I'm going to be adding stretchers, connecting the two legs as well. So, you know, there's going to be for like basically I'm going to have the plywood connecting the two edges. Same that edge. Obviously, I'm going to keep that edge up a little bit. I'm not going to go as far because I want these to be stackable as well. And obviously 2 stretchers. So I think it should be really strong enough. I can't see there being an issue, and I think they'll last for quite a long time under good use. So the top itself, my original trail of thought, which I mentioned before, was to get maybe 3/4 inch or an inch of some good quality plywood, laminated together. One of the reasons for this, obviously, as I mentioned, because it's nice and available to a lot of people. And another big thing about it is, for a lot of beginners, they don't have to worry about flattening the thing. As long as they glue it up in a good manner, you know, on a reasonably straight bench or even a floor, a reasonably straight floor, they should get some decent results basically. So kind of that was one of the reasons with that. So what I've went for personally, I'm going to make the bench 6 foot long. So that means from one end I'm going to come with a sheet of ply. I'm going to come 2 foot, and I'm going to rip across the 4 foot section, which is going to leave us 6 foot long by 4 foot in width, and then I'm basically just going to do 2 more cuts into that, and that's going to give us 3 sections. However, the only ply I could get my hands on, birch ply, was 12mm. So I opted to get 2 sheets of it. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to laminate, how many sections? 5. I'm going to laminate 5 sections, so that's going to give me somewhere in the region of 62 in thickness. I think that's going to be ample enough. I could have made it a little bit thicker. I am going to kind of have to gauge what it's like with the 5, because if it's stupidly heavy, obviously it's not going to be very good for us. So I've still basically got to lift it up and carry it into the garden. I don't want to be struggling too much, but at the same time I do require it to have a little bit of weight to stay put. So I'm going to have to kind of do all the cuts and basically put them together, maybe clamp it in place and kind of lift it and have a feel what I kind of feel with it, and basically just laminate the thing, glue it together. So I'm not overly sure what I'm going to be doing, like kind of dog hole wise. It will have dog holes in it, obviously, because I use pegs, and I think pegs are like invaluable in woodwork, and obviously that's just my opinion, but I really like them a lot and I use them a lot. But it is kind of a different kettle of fish when you're using pegs on a tall bench compared to like a low bench or a Roman workbench. It's a total different kettle of fish, and there's a lot of things that you can do on a low bench that you can't do on a tall bench, and vice versa. So I think one of the things I was looking at doing was to, same again, I recommend this with any bench, put the minimal amount of dog holes in that you can. Plus, to add to that, what I'm going to do when I put the minimal amount in, I'm going to try and keep it in line with how I would use it in a Roman workbench. Not an exact copy of what I'm doing, but I'm going to position it where at a later date, if I don't get on with this, I can still use the top. I can actually still make a Roman workbench out of it, and I'll have the dog holes, or at least some of the dog holes, in place, and it's going to work for us in a Roman workbench. Basically, I'll just have to add some some holes and basically put some legs in. That's if I'm not going to get on with it, but I think I'll be okay. But I thought that, just to be on the cautious side, so I'm kind of, I haven't got like a worktop that I'm not using, and it's just lying there and all that money, because it did cost, I think it cost us like £140 for the 2 sheets of birch ply. So obviously, if things don't go to how I want them to go, I don't want that just like sitting there. So I thought the good thing about it is it's there, and even if I make a bench and I give it away, at least it's going to be good, like a good usable bench. I can't see that happening, but just to be on the safe side, that's what I've opted for. So fixing the Roman workbench to the Sawhorses. So one of the things I initially thought to do was to, and I've seen this done a couple of times, was to actually use some other material and basically join the 2 Sawhorses together, like a simple lap joint, a couple of screws. But as soon as a couple of screws come into my head, that meant for me I would have to put the joint together, then screw the screws in, and I don't want to do that. There's probably a lot of people that'll watch this and think it's only 2 screws, but I don't care. I don't want to do that. I basically, what I wanted to do, I wanted to get the 2 Sawhorses out, get the top in place, and like be ready to go. So the simplest thing that come to my head was get it in place and put some pegs in. That was the simplest thing that come to my head. So that's what I'm going to go with. So I'm going to basically put some pegs straight through the top and into the sawhorses. So I'm not going to drill all the way through the sawhorses. I'm only going to, you know, however much I decide. I don't know what I'm going to decide, mate. I don't know, maybe 2 inches. And basically, if I want to pull the thing apart, it just means I've just got to lift the thing up. The only problem with this is that if there's any upward force, which I can't really think of any examples, but if there's any upward force, there is a possibility for it to lift out of place. I find that a little bit like what's the word I'm looking for? It's not going to be likely for that to happen, but there is always a possibility of that going to happen. So my original trailer thought, like when I was thinking about this, was to actually put some like even some 2x4 underneath, and actually put a peg in like this way as well, like kind of on the underside, horizontally. So you'd have the two pegs on the top going in vertically, and then on the underside you'd have a peg going in horizontally. And this isn't. It's not going to go anywhere, basically. That was my trailer for, but then I thought you're adding more stuff, and it's not going to stack good, or at least flat. I think that's one of the good things about the top. It's just for all intents and purposes, it's just a slab, isn't it? You know, it's gonna like stack flat wherever. It's gonna stack flat. It's gonna stack on its side. You know, you could literally, I'm literally going to be able to shove it into the back of the car or the back of the van, and it's not going to take up much space at all. And the good thing about it is I can actually stack things on top of it. You know, like if I'm going somewhere to carry out some work for someone, that's kind of how I wanted it. I didn't want, like, you know, buttons kind of, you know, kind of sticking out and causing problems. That's, well, you know, I might be exaggerating a little bit, you know, calling them problems. I don't really think they're problems, but, you know, it probably would have annoyed us, like, so. It's not really the best of things to do, to annoy yourself, especially when you've done that thing yourself. So yeah, that's kind of where I am with it. So I did actually learn something today. So the legs, I just thought I'd mention this. The legs, when I'm cutting the legs, the legs at the very top, as I mentioned before, are cut at 15 degrees. So there's a 15 degree cut on the end grain at the top of the leg, and then there's a 15 degree cut on the face. So the way I've always done this is had the end grain facing me, cut the angle, and then trace my line down on an angle, cut it that way, turn the thing over, done the same again. So one of the problems with this is that on the face section where where you've got your line coming down where it should be square, and now I get that square, there always tends to be a belly, and I've done it like this for such and such a long time. The reason I've done it like this for such a long time is because instead of cutting, or if I'm using a Ryobi saw and I'm pulling it towards myself, I've got a lot of room, and it's the end grain. In fact, I've got unlimited room because it's coming off the end of the bench. So if you actually start pulling the other way towards the face, if you will, it's a little bit more awkward, and you get more resistance, because when you're cutting on an angle, yeah, it's a hard cut. It's a funny cut rather, because you're not quite cross cutting and you're not quite ripping. It's kind of in between, so it can be a bit of a funny old cut. So what I find when you're cutting, your saw will like kind of jagger. It can be, not always, but it can be a little bit awkward when you're cutting, and you tend to get a lot more resistance. So I was just kind of messing around because I wasn't happy with the cuts I kind of was getting, because I was having to clean it up with a plane, which isn't a great issue for me. But the point is, I'm doing a video and I want people to be able to kind of, make it and not have like a lot of problems. So I've done it the way I've said, and I got a cut like perfect. It was like perfectly square. It was at the 15 degrees, perfectly square on the vertical. And I've done that 3 times in a row. So the only thing I can think of is that when you're cutting it the way I had been cutting it, pulling the saw towards the end grain, you're actually riding the grain, and it's pulling itself out because you're riding with the grain, if that makes sense. Whereas when you're pulling in towards the grain or towards the face section, you're actually going against the grain a little bit, and you going against the grain actually keeps your saw where it should be. What can I say? I've been cutting like that for years, and I don't know why today just dawned on us to have a go like that. And as I said, 3 consecutive cuts, near enough perfect. So there you go. If you're ever cutting, maybe 80 degrees or 15 degrees from the face, pull it in towards the face rather than towards the end grain, or cut that way, and you'll get better results. Yeah. So that's it today. Hopefully next week I should be able to give a bit of an update on this bench, and I should have had some decent use out of it. So I might do a bit of a podcast on that. So there will be a video, obviously, and I'm most likely going to dish out some free plans if everything works out how I want it to work out. I'll do some plans on SketchUp, and those will be free. So keep an eye out for them if you're interested, and until the next time, I shall see and speak to you guys later.